Each day we strive to make it Black home, Black to the future, Black in one piece. Where being Black is a bop, like a song we replay every 3 minutes and 30 seconds of every day. Where being Black is a vibe, all the time. You're listening to TMBP Media with your host, Dr. Tasha. Welcome back to Black in One Piece. Today with us, we have Brad Richards. To jump right into the conversation, can you share with us what you do professionally and then anything you want the people to know before we dive in?
First off, thanks for having me.
Yes.
I'm super excited to be here. But what I do in my daytime role, I serve as the community programs coordinator on the access and engagement team with the Public Policy and Management Center at Wichita State. So that's what I do in my day job, working on community initiatives and government strategic planning. But aside from work, I consider myself a hobbyist. So I find my ways doing different things, exploring videography, photography, just getting involved with the community overall and trying to tell stories that way. Currently pursuing my master's degree at Wichita State in public administration as well. Student, worker, aspiring entrepreneur.
Love that. Who would you want to play you in a biopic?
Tyler Williams.
Okay.
From Abbott Elementary and Everybody Hates Chris.
Yes.
I think he's an extremely talented actor for one. He's very funny, but like very clever at the same time. And then growing up, people would always be like, man, you look like that kid from Everybody Hates Chris. And I think it's the ears. But people would say that, and I just respect what he does, and I think he'd do a good job. So.
Got it. Who could we ask for all things Brad Richards?
It had to be between my mom and my little sister.
Okay.
Yeah, my little sister would love that.
Okay. And then last one is, what is your unpopular opinion? So it doesn't have to be anything serious, but what's that thing that you are 100% about and people are like, Brad, now?
I'm quite the troll, and I'm a slight hater on certain things too. When we talk about food, I'm a foodie. I like food, trying different stuff. But there's certain things that I'm not doing. Blue cheese? No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, all right. This is a safe space. So.
Very safe, yeah.
So no blue cheese for me. Yeah, I'll say that. We'll just start there. No blue cheese for Brad.
I'm with it. So now, when you talk about blue cheese, a lot of people dip their wings in blue cheese. Do you dip your wings in anything?
Ranch.
Okay.
Yeah, ranch. And then my grandma growing up, she made hot sauce. And so I've always tried to spice it up a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And then I'll go to the store and I'll find a little exotic stuff. So hot sauce or ranch.
Okay. But no blue cheese.
Yeah, and
I'm with it.
Not at all. Never.
All right. So with that, we'll jump right in.
Okay.
How do you identify in terms of race and ethnicity?
I would say Black. If they put, when you fill out an application, if it's African American, I'm checking off African American or parentheses Black. But if it's just said Black, I identify as Black. Yeah.
How do you define Blackness?
The idea that comes to mind is the idea of evolution. In the Bible, and they say bronze skin and hair of wool, or if you look scientifically, the oldest human remains were found in Africa. Enough maybe information to say that's where we come from, or humanity comes from. And the ways in which we've been able to evolve, our culture has evolved and defined other cultures as well. When I think of it from a historical perspective, some of those same themes, being able to evolve, overcome, invent, we set the tone for a lot of things that evolve our society in a lot of ways. So.
Ooh, that was good. And so I define something called peak Blackness as those moments when we are experiencing something, we're witnessing something. The first thing that comes to mind is I love us. I love being Black. So what's peak Blackness for you? What's one of those moments for you?
Oh, man. Peak Blackness for me, when I see us just showing our true colors and embracing that for the better, embracing our creativity, embracing our knowledge, embracing what makes us who we are as people, and not being afraid in spaces where maybe it's not always accepted at first.
Right.
Key on the at first, because usually we set the tone, it may not be accepted, and then people start accepting it, and then it's accepted. And so I think that's a beautiful thing as well. When I think about it from some of the things maybe that I've learned back in the day when it was brother and sister, where we acknowledged each other as black power. I didn't live those experiences, but I was inspired by those experiences, and I would consider that part of the peak Blackness as well. Okay.
Have you ever wanted to be anything other than Black? Why or why not?
I'm a light-skinned man, and both of my parents have a darker complexion than I do. My younger brother has a darker complexion than I do. And growing up, I did have some question marks. People would ask me, are you mixed? And I would say yes, but I really didn't know what that meant. I brought that to my mom's attention because I was very confused, and she just explained to me, you're Black. You're very Black.
Yeah.
But that also inspired me to talk to my grandparents about where does our family come from. On my dad's side, we got family that comes from France who moved to the St. Croix Virgin Islands, found their way to Kansas. But yeah, there were some times when I was younger that I had some questions about that. But after some conversations, I understood. So.
Listen, parents will get you all the way together. My mom always instilled in my brother and I, y'all might be light skinned, but y'all Black. Like,
right.
okay?
Literally, just like that.
So
just like that.
That transitions perfectly. Skin complexion, colorism, hair discrimination, that's the core of my academic research. So anything else that you might want to share around even your hair and how those aspects of your identity have shaped your Blackness or your Black experience?
Taking care of my hair is something that at least a part of our culture is important. You got to put some grease, you got to put some oil, you got to put a do-rag or a bonnet on and take care of that. And then some of the things I've been able to understand just from African culture, which we come from, and how the hair is extremely important. You talk about spirituality. My step-pops growing up, he would always say, our hair grows towards the sun for a reason. And that's like a proverb he would speak to me.
Yeah. So. You talked about religion a little bit, spirituality. You mentioned your sister, family, different aspects of your life. Are there any other things that you think have shaped or impacted the way that you see Blackness?
Yeah, a lot of it stems from family, reading, and learning. I think that was the biggest aspect that I developed my sense of Blackness. As I mentioned, I had some confusion at a younger age, but taking the initiative to start reading, I was really inspired by a lot of Black literature and history that inspires the work that I want to do moving forward. It gave me a sense of pride, that history aspect of it, taking the time to learn, and then having people in my family and my community who also poured some of that knowledge as well from that Black perspective.
Speaking of that Black perspective, how would you describe what being Black in this world means?
We are noticed, maybe not always seen. We stand out in who we are as people and what we bring to the table and what we offer as terms of influence on culture. I think we set the tone in a lot of ways. Yeah. But then there are some undertones of we may not be seen for, we may not be accepted for how that comes about. It's like this duality of take the good when it's good and then hate the bad when it's bad, but not understand that a lot of the good stems from what the bad kind of creates.
And so you mentioned Black culture. Do you think Black culture and Blackness are the same?
I would say yes. Blackness is the essence, and the essence is within the culture. It influences the culture, the Blackness.
And then what are some ways that you display your Blackness on a day-to-day?
I'm proud to be a Black man. I think for anybody, we can all say we didn't choose to be whatever color we came out to be. So I think just being myself and working to do the things that I want to do to inspire other people that look like me. Showing up authentically in those spaces, not being afraid to embody my culture, even in spaces where it may not be traditionally accepted. Just being a Black man, period, at the end of the day. Wherever I go, that's not going to change. Putting on for all the Black men and all the Black people out here trying to embody Black excellence.
Yeah. We touched a little bit on your community work at the top. Share a little bit more about that and why it's important for you as a Black man to show up the way that you do for your community. Oh,
man. I like that question. To speak specifically towards a project that I'm working on, the 67214 area has been something we've always had conversations about as being one of the most under-resourced areas in the state of Kansas. But one project we're working on is to help improve kindergarten readiness and third grade reading levels in those communities, specifically bringing organizations together. Oftentimes you see siloed efforts where one organization is trying to tackle this entire issue. So one thing that I'm responsible for is bringing different entities, nonprofits, corporate organizations, organizations serving in the community, churches, everybody to the table to try and get on the same agenda to help uplift these children. That's something I'm super inspired to do. I'm 25 years old. If you would have asked me would I be doing this work when I was 15, I probably would have said it was something way different. But I think it's important to show up where you're at, do what you can with what you have, where you're at. And as far as the community space goes, we have to show the way. Some people say nobody showed us how to do it. We have to show the way so people can go the way. And I just want to inspire people to take ownership of our communities, not only from a social level, but even from an economics perspective, and learn more about the history of our communities. Because if you don't understand what took place where you're at or what influenced why things are the way they are, you may not ever understand why it is. And there are a lot of things that have taken place that have influenced our communities. And it's important for us to come together to try and undo some of those things before the outcomes continue to have this downward spiral or effect. So that's what inspires my community work.
Yeah. And I love that you brought in the economic support aspect of it all. We talk about somebody talking the talk and walking the walk. Brad is that person, y'all, because I've seen you out in the community. You've come to events where I'm vending. He stayed purchasing something, y'all. So I appreciate the support. Shifting gears just a tad, as I was preparing for this interview, I realized that we have quite a few things in common. You are also a first-gen college grad.
Absolutely.
You also are a member of a Black Greek letter organization. Okay.
The guys.
So I just wanted to touch on the educational experience. Other parts of my research have focused on what it's like being Black in higher ed, both from the student perspective, but also as a professional. And now you're in both of those spaces. So can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. As a kid, I was just inspired to go to college. Like they said, just pursue your education. Like whatever you do, just keep going to school. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I studied dietetics when I first got to college, thinking I was going to be in the health space. I graduated with a degree in economics. So big transition, but I think that also speak towards the preparation aspect of it. When I'm preparing to do these FAFSA forms or decide a major, my mom was extremely helpful and supportive in all the processes, but sometimes it was hard to ask certain questions because we don't really know. I feel like it was taking a risk, but it was a great risk to just get away from home and be around different people, different perspectives. I thought that was a great opportunity for me, but it was challenging. It was a lot of unknowns at first, particularly at K-State. That's where I went. A predominantly white institution. So as an African-American male, there were some interesting experiences early on that really charged me up. And actually what motivated me to pursue a degree in economics was that there were some racially intense events happening on our campus, and I'm showing up in spaces very loudly. I'm on Twitter very loudly, very aggressively, and at the same time, I'm not feeling like I'm being heard. They may be feeling me, but there's nothing being done really about it. And I've seen this happening on the broader community on the national level as well. Like, what can I do to actually get in those spaces of decision making or be a representation of this particular cause in these spaces? And at that time, I was reading Malcolm X's biography, and he was saying if he would have went to college, he would have studied either philosophy, economics, or political science or something like that. And that's where my leap of faith came to pursue economics. But at K-State, particularly, I was a resident assistant and Black male resident assistant where I had one Black male on my floor. I had both girls and boys, but pretty much everybody was white. That was a cool opportunity to connect with people from different perspectives. There were people with completely different political views where if I'd never knew them or got to connect with them, I'd be like, I don't want to know you because I don't think we believe some of the same things. But having that opportunity to connect with those people, it was enlightening because it's like we care about the same things. We're just going about it in a very different way. And it presented those conversations up front. I think that might have been a little bit different if I went to HBCU or something like that, where I'm surrounded by people who look like me, which would still be a great experience.
For sure.
If I get a doctorate, you know, I'm
That's
trying.
That's where it's at.
Okay. But still, I think that was the unique perspective. Going to a PWI as a Black male, first generation student, stepping outside of my community and trying to figure it out. And I was blessed to be able to have people who were willing to support what I wanted to do, people who challenged me. And it was a blessing to be able to get the bachelor's degree. It felt like a real milestone. And now I'm pursuing a master's and just keep trying.
That's awesome. Are there any pieces of advice that you might give to Black first-gen students, particularly those attending predominantly white institutions? Because it is a different experience.
Yeah, definitely so. I say find your communities, but then also don't be afraid to have tough conversations with people, to confront people respectfully about those microaggressions. Don't be afraid to be Black in those spaces that are not. From the first generation perspective, from going to college and then getting into the workforce, I studied economics and I worked in banking for a few months because I thought this is what I studied. I got this degree. I paid this money. Now I got to go make something of it ASAP. I was like, the world's a lot bigger than what I thought it was. I'll be honest. Just pursuing your passions. Find what you're passionate about and continue to pursue that. And don't be afraid to pursue that. Don't be afraid to try. There's nothing wrong with trying. You never know what you might find on the other side of that. And the last thing I'll say is network while you're in college. I've been able to connect with people outside professionally, but there's been times where I've connected with people that I've connected with back in college professionally outside of it. So having a strong network of people is important. And that's that one time in your life where you're really around people who come from so many different places. Because when you get into the workforce, it may not be represented in the same way.
That's really good advice. So you've been in the workforce for a little while now. You recently started a new job. You shared that you're 25. I think it's amazing for other young people in general, but especially young Black people, young Black males, to see the work that you're doing.
It's been good. It's been a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily say success, but it's been a lot of some achievement, but it hasn't been solely by myself. I've built a really strong network of mentors and people who have really invested in me. Even when I started working at the museum, that came off the strength of having a connection with Joseph Shepard, who's previously on your show, and then going to the museum and working under Miss Denise Sherman, who really poured into me in a lot of ways, connecting me with people in the community, and then approaching those connections, because you can have connections but never talk to people. Somebody can introduce you to somebody and you never follow up, but taking those steps to follow up and really just see what's going on and build those relationships, I think is extremely important when you're working out in the community or just professionally. Those relationships mean a lot. You can be provided with opportunities through your connections. Sometimes better than just doing things by yourself. That's been the biggest benefit. Establishing mentors has been great. People giving me advice on certain moves, and then they like, oh, you need to do this. Or even in spaces that I'm not in, being comfortable and knowing that opportunities have been given to me because somebody spoke about me in another room. And that means a lot to me.
I think that's really good advice for so many reasons. But I think historically, traditionally, we've been so conditioned to anything we get is got to be off of in the trenches, hard work. And not saying that we're not going to work hard, but it's okay if you got to some place because somebody said your name or you had a connection. And I think the more that we walk in that and allow that to be, we don't have to always have a struggle life or experience or story for it to be great.
Work smart.
Exactly.
Work smart. You ain't got to work smart. And I mean, doing things alone is lonely and it's long and it takes a long time and you can't do everything. You can't be a specialist at everything. Also, I feel like in this generation, people are trying to find their way to the top as fast as they can, but not really lifting as they climb as much. Like people do. Don't get it twisted, because people have been able to do that, especially in my life, in my experience. But oftentimes you do see that as the case. 2
more questions before we get to the big question of the day. One might seem random, but you mentioned earlier in the conversation about your hobbies. And I think as a society, we've gotten away from hobbies. The idea of doing something just because it's fun or just because you have an interest in it and are curious. So I loved hearing you say that. You mentioned videography, photography. Are there any other hobbies?
Oh, man, for sure. Chess. I like to play chess. Sports follower, big avid sports follower. Anything where I can learn. The videography, that's that part, but then there's also the editing part and the software and all these things that you have to teach yourself. And so any space that I can get in that ignites passion and then I can teach myself or just learn, that's how I take my hobbies.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is just for you to share. Did you cross while you were in college, in undergrad? Okay. So just sharing a little bit more about why that was important and significant for you and what being part of a Black Greek letter organization has meant for you as a Black man, as a Black person, just your growth and development, all the things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Being a first-generation college student, I had won some Greek scholarships in high school that was supported by the local Wichita community. I had some involvement or met some individuals in Greek organizations through Botillion, through high school community involvement. But growing up, I didn't really know much about it. None of my family members did it. And for me, any relationships that I build, personal relationships matter more than any type of title or joining a specific organization. So when I got to K-State, Omega Men who were there, they were moving students in when they were connecting with people. And one of them, we played basketball together, and it was just building those personal relationships. And then as I started seeing more of the things they were doing related to their organization, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, they're out in the community, they at the parties, they on campus doing things and representing Black men in a way that's positive. I started doing more research. What is this about? To see so many Black men of major influence that I didn't know who were a part of this specific organization was like, wow, that's inspiring. And as somebody who aspires to inspire, I want to do that for the organization, use my skills and gifts to do the same thing. And then also just the intangibles of what it meant, the cardinal principles and the mission were things that I felt like I already had inside of me, but to be amongst men with like-minded ideals was my goal. Having networking opportunities, building camaraderie with individuals was part of that as well. Friendships, period. People who I can call on. If I'm in another state, I at least have a source of connections. We have some common ground. Having those male mentors just to talk about life with, where it's just you feel comfortable having these conversations with men who have lived longer than you and can give you some advice has been a benefit of being in a fraternity. Of course, those career connections, being able to travel and see different things, serve the community. I think that's been one of the fun parts is that we don't just get together just to plan parties and kick it and have the whole fun, but we get together to plot ideas on how can we invest in our community? How can we show up in the best light to represent our organization?
Yeah. Way more than just parties.
Yeah. So that's cool, you know what I'm saying? For so long, but you know. Yeah.
One of my favorite things, so I've shared before that I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. One of the things I love the most is just knowing that I've moved so much, and wherever I go, I can tap into a local chapter and get connected almost instantaneously.
Tapped in, yeah.
Coming from Newport News, Virginia, I was a little bit nervous coming all the way out here to Wichita, Kansas. But honestly, that was one of the biggest things that made me feel a little bit more at ease, was knowing that I could connect with my sorors. So.
Absolutely. I'd say the same coming back from K-State to Wichita. That's been a major plus for me too, those relationships.
Yeah. So that brings us to the question of the day. Thinking about everything we've discussed in your lived experience, what does Black in one piece mean to you?
In my experience as an African-American male, a lot of us don't make it home in one piece. And there's a lot of influences out there that can sway us one way or another, where we put targets on our backs.
When I came up with the concept, I was literally talking about physically making it back home in one piece.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, there's a lot of things that we're exposed to out in the world that we might make it home physically, but we're not mentally and emotionally in one piece. So that hit me when you said that.
Yeah, that type of thing. I think Black people, or just in my own perspective as a Black male, it's very complex dualities or influences from our culture, the ways we grow up, what our expectations in life are, and then we're doing more consuming than connecting. And so that influences a lot of things and the ways we see ourselves.
The conversation prior to you coming in, we talked about how the idea of self-care and wellness has become so consumed by capitalism. There's still stigma attached to pursuing support for our mental health. We've made a little bit of progress, but within that progress, so much of what's out there about what self-care looks like has become something to be monetized.
Absolutely.
That we lose a little bit of the significance of it.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes just having those small, authentic conversations, people think to practice your mental health, you got to go to therapy, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. And sometimes it's just maybe changing a habit, or having a conversation, not being afraid to be vulnerable. That's a challenge that I had growing up, is you got to be tough, or you might have to do things alone. That's a lesson, or just pride, ego. Coming from where we come from, it's just like that chip on your shoulder. But bottling all that up, it's not really that healthy. Finding ways to be vulnerable, finding people you can trust to talk to, and practicing mental health with the resources that are available. I had never touched therapy until I got to college, and that really changed my perspective on just being able to have vulnerable conversations with people, with the relationships that I had.
Something you said that stuck with me was you trying to get help for your mental health isn't always therapy. And I think that's such an important message, because I too am a firm believer in therapy. Okay, it has been life-changing, life-saving for me. Everybody is not at that place. It could be because of the stigma or because of financial barriers. There's a host of reasons why someone might not be at that place. Another challenge is finding the right fit. That is huge.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, but I brought up the commercialization of self-care because certain specific ways of supporting ourselves are pushed, and it's almost if we're not going to fall into those narrow buckets, then we can't do anything. And if that's not true, I love that you said it could be as simple as a conversation or just changing a habit. That is major.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share on this topic?
From the Black community perspective, I think it's going to take a lot, but I think it's possible for us to find ways to take ownership collectively of our communities. And when I say ownership, that's like a double entendre. Of course, the economic aspect of it, but then also the social aspect of it. Our communities aren't going to be able to evolve if we're not invested in them. And there are people doing the work, but I think it's going to take more of us to take ownership on what's happening in our communities. I think of back in the day when we talk about the height of some of these civil rights movements and these Black empowerment movements, they weren't just protests. People were buying things and owning things and controlling markets. I just want to tell one last story just to bring this idea home. When we think about watermelon, there's a stereotype involved with Black people and watermelon, right? But a lot of people don't realize that when slavery ended, many African Americans or freed, formerly enslaved individuals started farming watermelon.
Yep.
And who was buying the watermelon?
Okay.
Us. We were keeping the money in the pot and making it happen. And they were building communities off of the strength of just this one particular product.
Yeah.
Now, there are influences that influence our cultures and the ways that we think about ourselves.
Yes, for sure.
But that's just one particular example. Now, people say watermelon and Black people is this stereotype. But if you look at the history, it's actually something positive, not something negative. I think there's a lot of things about our people and our culture that was taught to us in a negative light. And there are a lot of positive things that we never really get to learn. I learned a lot of that at the African American Museum, going around talking to kids and asking them about stuff and some things they didn't know. But once you explain it to them, they're like, wow, I didn't know about Mansa Musa, who was the richest man to ever live. I didn't know he was Black. I didn't know anything about that. So stuff like that I think is cool. And I think that's going to help move our communities forward, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that inspires the work that I want to do. Community education is extremely important to me.
On that note, please share with the people anything you have coming up or going on and where we can find you to connect with you.
Y'all can find me on Instagram at _just.brad. What do I got going on? I'm just working hard, honestly, working with the PPMC on community initiatives and working with whatever I can to get involved. You can find me here in the local community, trying to help uplift people and do the work. If you need any video services, just hit me up.
Thank you so much again, Brad. I've really enjoyed our conversation, getting to know you a little bit better. Y'all be sure to check out all the great things that Brad has going on in the community. And until next time, stay Black in one piece.
Appreciate it.